it's Penny here, and today we're going to be talking about all the books that I read in January. As usual, I am going to do this book battle style, which means I pair up all the books, I battle them against each other until we come up with the best book of the month. So this month I read 8 books. We've got a couple of YA mystery thrillers, a couple of middle grade books, a YA fantasy, and a couple of adult fantasies. We've also got the full range from a 1-star to a 5-star, so this is going to be a bit of a journey. But let's start off with our first battle, which is going to be between our YA mystery thrillers. So we've got One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus up against A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. So One of Us is Lying is about this group of teens who all end up in detention. Unfortunately, by the end of this detention session, one of them has died. And each one of these teens has a different secret or something that they're trying to keep quiet, as well as potentially a motive for the murder. So they're all suspects, and we're kind of following along with their journey as they try to figure out what really happened, as well as their own secrets kind of coming to light and dealing with the fallout from that. The thing I like the most about this one is I felt like the characters were very relatable. Often teen angst is a little bit too much for me now that I'm well out of my teen years, but I felt like this angst felt very realistic and not like overwrought like some YA books can be. It also wasn't entirely romance focused, which I appreciated, and just unexpectedly I enjoyed following along with these teens' journeys and them getting to know themselves and building their own confidence. At the same time, the mystery was pretty good. I will admit I guessed what had happened, so I wasn't entirely surprised. However, there were some surprises in the way that things happened, so I still found the mystery element interesting and I enjoyed trying to pick up on all the different clues. I do think if I had read this as a teen, it would have blown my mind and I would have loved it. Then the second book in this battle is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. The main character in this story is this girl who's kind of very over the top, overachiever, very studious. But in her town when she was younger, there was a girl who went missing and another boy was accused of her murder. She, however, had an interaction with him that made her believe that he wasn't guilty. And now, as part of the school assignment, she's looking at how social media affected that case. But really, she just wants to try and solve the murder because she doesn't believe that this boy really did it. So we're following along with this investigation. What I will say about this book is don't read the audiobook. I hated the audiobook. And I think it was because it was a US audiobook narrator, and this book to me felt very clearly British. Like the setting is clearly British. I feel like as well the humor was kind of that dry British humor, which in New Zealand, totally on board with that. But I feel like whenever Americans try to adapt that humor, they often turn it into like big over the top humor, and it kind of misses the point. And I felt like that's what the audiobook narrator was doing, is they were trying to like really overact things, and it just made it seem like farcical and made the characters feel less genuine. So I tried very hard to ignore the tone that the audiobook narrator was adding to the story, because I do still think this one was a lot of fun. Again, I did guess most of the elements of the mystery. I feel like they were pretty obvious right from the start, but also teenage me wouldn't probably have picked up on a lot of these things, so it was probably still an okay mystery thriller. And I can definitely see that some people would find these kind of characters a lot of fun, whereas I found the ones in One of Us is Lying more relatable. So probably different tastes. But I do think if I am putting these two books up against each other, I'm going to go with One of Us is Lying, just because I like the fact that it felt much more realistic and I just connected with the characters a lot more. So we're going to put One of Us is Lying through to the next round. Then our next battle is going to be our middle grade books. So we've got Along the Saltwise Sea by A. Deborah Baker up against Logan Likes Marianne by Gale Galligan, but adapted from the original Babysitters Club books by Anne M. Martin. So let's talk about Along the Saltwise Sea. This was the 1-star book, and I am so sad because I really want to love this series. This series is actually written by Sean M. Maguire, and it is books that are mentioned in Sean M. Maguire's book Middle Game. I really love Middle Game, and the way that the stories fit into that other story was really interesting. And then the idea that she would actually write these books and we could read them was something I was super excited about. And like the first one was pretty good. What's it called? Under the Woodward Wall is the first one, and like I quite enjoyed it. I did have a few little problems with it, and I feel like those problems that I had with the first one were just like amplified in this second one, and I'm so disappointed. So in this second one, we've got Avery, who's very kind of like strict and rules focused, and Zib, and they are exploring the up and under, this magical world, and they're trying to find the impossible road and follow it to the improbable city. But to be honest, most of the time when I was reading the book, I kind of forgot what they were even trying to do. They're just traveling around in this place. They come across this pirate ship, and nothing that happened there really made sense. There was kind of this mystery thing going on, but it wasn't very interesting. I found the reveal kind of like boring. And I think also something I was disappointed in is something Shawnee Maguire does a lot, is she kind of incorporates this social commentary into her stories. And sometimes when she does that, she's so on point, and I really love the tone of the way she does it and how she weaves it into the plot. I think the problem I had with Along the Saltwise Sea is there was no plot. There's barely any character development, and it just feels like there's no focus for her social commentary either. So she's just like bringing in random ideas about the world, and as well, like some of her things that she said I didn't think were as on point as some of the other stuff I've read. And like, it's just really weird insertions into the story. Like one point when a kid was drowning, she inserted this idea that he was thinking about his mother doing things for him and him doing things for his father, and like looking at the equality of that. But like, this kid's drowning. Is this really the right time for that? It just, I don't know. I felt like it was kind of waffly and didn't have much point. And I know this is an unpopular opinion because I saw a lot of people rating this very highly, but what I will note is also that I noticed a lot of people rating it really highly, but having the same criticisms that I had. So maybe it's just that these things annoy me a lot more, or maybe people were just so hopeful that this would be great that they were making themselves believe that it was great. It's kind of what I think, but who knows. Anyway, I didn't like it. I was really disappointed. Then the next book in this battle is Logan Likes Marianne. So as I said, this is an adaptation of the original Babysitters Club books by Anna Madden, but this is the like graphic novel form. And I've been reading these. I don't actually know off the top of my head what number this is in the new series because they aren't aligning it exactly with the old books, which is a little bit weird. In Logan Likes Marianne, they have made a couple of changes to the plot, and I don't know how I feel about them. I feel like part of what I really loved about the Babysitters Club books, even if I wasn't aware of it when I was a child, is that I learnt so much about the world through it. Like, so many of the themes are actually like interesting stories, but secretly educational in terms of how to live your life and what's going on in the world. So even though I really enjoyed this reading experience and I really like the art, it's bright and colourful and fun, and I just had a really fun nostalgic time, I was a little bit disappointed in some of the themes that were skipped over. So for example, this one also combines Jessie joining the club with Logan joining the club, and they changed the character of Logan to be black, which is not a problem, but what is a problem is they dropped any mention of racism from the story. And part of me is like, well, maybe that's positive because we're looking at it as like an ideal world where this isn't an issue, which like, it's nice to show young people like a positive world and how things could be, but it's also like racism is a fact in the world, and so it feels like it's missing the opportunity to teach children about that. As well, there was a part in the original book that kind of looked at Logan being a boy babysitter and how that was kind of looked down on by certain groups of people because they thought of babysitting as like a girl thing. And that was skipped over too, which I found kind of weird. So I really enjoyed the read, lots of fun, but kind of disappointed in some ways that it didn't hit some of those themes. But still, if I'm putting this up against Along the Saltwise Sea, obviously Logan Likes Marianne will win and go through to the next round. Okay, then we move into our fantasy books of the month. So our first battle is going to be between Redemptor by Jordan Ifueko and Kurangaituku by Whiti Hereaka. So first, Redemptor. This is the second book in the Raybearer duology, where in the first book we're following this young girl who's been put forward as a candidate to this emperor's court. So the idea is the emperor will pick someone from each kingdom to be part of his court. And each of those people kind of naturally have a different magical ability, And as well, once they make this special bond with him, he gains an immunity to a different kind of death, so that by the time he's built his full court, he now has full immunity and can't die. As it turns out though, this young girl has been set up by her mother to try and assassinate him. So it's kind of weird because she's trying to gain his love and his trust so that she can be part of his court, but also she's trying to murder him, but she doesn't actually know that. So I really loved the first book and the relationships that were built, and like the way that the different magic abilities were woven into the plot was really amazing. The second book, kind of things have changed quite a bit because of things that were revealed in the first book, so it's hard to talk about. But one problem that it did share with the first book is that there were a lot of characters. So this court has 12 people, and in the second book they're trying to form another court of 12 people, and it's just too many characters. And the basis of these groups is that they have very strong relationships, but you can't, within a short book, build that many relationships and make them all seem genuine. It's just too much. And I think the second book struggled with this even more. I don't feel like the different magical abilities were woven into the plot as well. In fact, I feel like the plot was kind of lacking. And again, I think it was just that there were too many characters. There was too much trying to happen in this book. There were some interesting things that did happen towards the end, but also by the time we got there, I felt like there wasn't enough space for them, and almost like that section could have been a whole separate book. So I'm a bit sad. I feel like the second book was rushed. And even though it was still, like, it was okay, but just compared to how much I love Raybearer, it was a little bit disappointing. Next we have Kurangaituku, and this is one I feel like I need to show you to explain how it works. Basically, this is a book by a Maori author about the Maori myth of Hatupatu and the Bird Woman, except this is the Bird Woman's story. Well, that's the concept. So the way that this book kind of works is that you can read it from either side. You've kind of got this one, which is Te Kore, which is about kind of the creation of the Bird Woman, which is really interesting story about imagination. She's kind of been formed by stories, and she meets up with Hatupatu. That part was quite traumatic. Some of the stuff that happens with him, he is actually quite awful in this story. But also she's in love with him. So this side is more kind of about unrequited love and a journey through the underworld. And then in the middle of the book, from either side, you can read a retelling of the myth of Hatupatu and the Bird Woman. I'm pretty sure, having read it from both sides, that it's the same from either side. However, having just read whichever side you've just read kind of gives you a different interpretation of it. I do think I read this side first, and I kind of feel like I would have been better to read this side first, because this one's more about creation and this one's more about, I guess, death and the underworld. There is a lot of Maori mythology incorporated into this story, so I think if you are interested in Maori mythology, this is a good one to pick up. I do wish that the Bird Woman's story had been kind of expanded more fully. This does focus a little bit more on like that literary style where it's focused more on the themes and the ideas. Some of the writing was really beautiful, other parts not so much. The first 2 chapters of this, I was in love. It was so beautiful. But I think some of the other stuff was just a little bit too conceptual and like beyond my poor work stressed brain. So I feel like I'm going to reread this at some point in the future when I can really focus on it a little bit more. It's the kind of book you want to take your time with. But it's also like just a brilliant book. Like the idea of coming up with this story and putting it all together, amazing. So if I'm putting Redemptor up against Kurangaituku, I am going to go with Kurangaituku just because it's amazing. So well thought through, so many great ideas. I feel like it was actually me that didn't live up to the book rather than the book not living up to my expectations. Alright, then we've got one last battle, and that's going to be between 2 books by the same author from the same series. So I've got The Black Prism by Brent up against The Blinding Knife. So these are the first 2 books from the Black Prism series. I have doubts about whether that's the actual series title, but The Black Prism is set in this world where there is color magic. So different people are able to draw magical abilities from the light around them. Different people are able to access different parts of the spectrum of light. So some people can just do 1 color, some special people can do 2, a few can maybe do more. but there is one religious figure who's able to not only access all kinds of light, but he's also able to split white light into the different colors. But as it turns out, the current Black Prism was not the original Black Prism. That was his brother. And in this war, he swapped places. So it's full of intrigue. There are all these secrets that he's keeping, but also secrets that other people know, some of which he's supposed to know, but he doesn't know them. And just the situation is kind of amazing. He's also kind of a morally grey character, kind of a dick in some ways. He's done some very bad things, but he's also trying to do some really good things. It doesn't always work out. As well, we're following this young boy who is in some way related to the original Black Prism, and because of that he's been pulled into this intrigue and he's trying to find his place in this magical world. I really loved the first book. I thought it was amazing. I really loved the world. I couldn't wait to get into the second book, and the second book really surprised me. It really expands the world. You get to start following more characters. You've got that young boy Kip at this like magic school kind of thing, so he's learning more about the magic. There's the introduction of this magical card game, which I can't help but compare to Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe it's like Magic the Gathering, but that card game also becomes much more of the story. I've actually in February read the third book in the series, and the card game goes even further. But the second book, I did think it just expanded things so much that it kind of really surprised me and blew my mind. I do feel like I had a little bit less connection to the characters in the second book, and that might be just because there were so many more of them. As well, the second book kind of has this war focus, and I tend not to like stories that are focused on war, so I did get a little bit bored in some of those parts. But the intrigue and the secrets and the political machinations, I love it. And I also just really like the tone of, we've got these people sometimes not doing the best things, but they're also kind of trying their best in a really weird situation. So it's a fantasy series that I really love. I think if I'm picking one of these to put forward to the next round, I am going to go with the Black Prism, just because the setup was so well done, and like learning about this world initially and getting to know these characters initially was something I really enjoyed. Alright, so then we're up to the next round, which is the semi-finals. And for our first battle, we're going to be putting One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus up against Logan Likes Marianne by Gale Galligan. This is one of these battles where I'm comparing two books that are very different, and I like them for very different reasons. Logan Likes Marianne, all about the nostalgia for me, and it's just a fun read, something light if you don't want to get too serious. Whereas One of Us is Lying actually got into some really interesting topics. I really related to the characters, and so I'm going to put One of Us is Lying through to the finals because I really enjoyed it. And then our other battle in the semi-finals is going to be between Kurangaituku by Whiti Hereaka and The Black Prism by Brent. These books were both really great, but in really different ways. And I really feel like I'm doing a disservice to Kurangaituku just because I was not mentally where I needed to be for this book when I read it. Whereas The Black Prism, even though there is a lot of intrigue and complexity going on, it's still like fun and set up for it to be easy to consume. And actually, The Black Prism was also a reread for me because I did listen to the audiobook last year as well. And then when I decided to pick up the second book, I couldn't remember what the hell was going on, so I reread the first book. So I think that I'm going to put The Black Prism through to the next round, but also that's purely based on my mental power and not necessarily a fair comparison of the two books. But anyway, then we will be up to the finals. So we've got One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus up against The Black Prism by Brent. This isn't really fair in my opinion because it's a YA mystery thriller. That's not really my genre, even though I did really enjoy this. I was kind of surprised that I liked it. Whereas The Black Prism is an epic fantasy with like all the elements that I really enjoy, like a really cool magic system, a morally grey character, a complex plot. This isn't a fair battle either. But still, I am glad I read both these books, but if I had to pick one as the best book of the month, the one that I would pick would be... Okay, my camera decided to add a little bit more anticipation into that, and the battery died. So, actually, The book that I would pick as the best book of the month, I don't think it's too much of a surprise if you know the kind of books that I like and you've been following my reading. The best book of the month was The Black Prism by Brent. I really enjoyed it, and I am now 3 books into the 5-book series, and I'm really excited to see where the next 2 books are going to go, because the first 3 books have just kept expanding on things and going in a really interesting direction. So, do let me know if you have read any of the books that I talked about in this video today. I would love to chat with you about them down in the comments. Or also let me know if you're interested in reading any of them. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.